Congratulations, you just died. Not almost died. Not clinically dead for 30 seconds before doctors shocked you back. Actually dead. Whatever unfinished email you were writing can wait forever now. Your shopping cart isn't getting checked out. That embarrassing text you meant to delete? Congratulations again. It's now part of your legacy. The strange part is that your body doesn't immediately realize what's happened. For a few seconds, everything is surprisingly ordinary. Your heart has stopped. Blood is no longer moving. No oxygen is reaching your organs. But billions of cells throughout your body are still alive, burning through the tiny amount of oxygen they have left, like a city running on emergency generators after the power station explodes. This is where Hollywood usually gets it wrong. Death isn't a switch, it's a process. A surprisingly organized one. Let's start with the biggest liar in your body, your brain. Despite making up only about 2% of your body weight, it normally consumes around 20% of all the oxygen you breathe. It's an oxygen addict. The moment your heart stops pumping, that supply disappears. Within seconds, blood pressure crashes to zero. Your vision begins narrowing. If you were conscious during cardiac arrest, the edges of the world may literally begin fading into darkness as your brain struggles to keep itself alive. Around 10 seconds later, you lose consciousness. That's usually it. No dramatic movie speech, no final inspirational sentence. Most people simply collapse because the brain can no longer keep itself awake. But unconscious doesn't necessarily mean everything has stopped. For decades, scientists assumed the brain simply shut off. Recent research suggests it's more complicated than that. In some patients whose hearts stopped, doctors have recorded brief bursts of highly organized brain activity in the moments after circulation ended. Nobody knows exactly what these signals mean. They don't prove consciousness continues after death. They don't prove it doesn't. They simply tell us that the brain doesn't always go quietly. It's still trying to do something. And then comes one of the strangest discoveries: your ears. Hearing may be one of the very last senses to disappear. There have been documented cases where patients later revived from cardiac arrest remembered conversations happening around them while they appeared completely unconscious. Doctors still don't know exactly how common this is, but it has permanently changed how many medical teams behave around dying patients. Even when someone appears completely unresponsive, staff are often encouraged to continue speaking respectfully, because nobody can say with certainty what the brain may still be processing. So if you're standing beside someone during their final moments, talk to them. They may not be able to answer, but they just might still hear your voice. Now let's return to you. Your breathing has stopped. No fresh oxygen is entering your lungs. Carbon dioxide is building up everywhere. Inside each cell, tiny power plants called mitochondria suddenly find themselves out of fuel. Normally, they produce the molecule that powers almost everything your body does: ATP. Without oxygen, ATP production crashes. Your cells begin burning through their emergency reserves. Imagine every city on Earth suddenly losing electricity and switching to backup batteries. For a little while, things still work. Lights flicker, computers stay on, people keep moving. Then, one by one, everything begins shutting down. The organs that demand the most energy fail first: the brain, the heart, the kidneys. Meanwhile, millions of other cells throughout your body stubbornly refuse to give up. Your skin cells are still alive, some muscle cells are still alive, even parts of your immune system are still functioning for a short time. Ironically, large parts of your body survive longer than the person they belonged to, which raises a weird question. Exactly when are you actually dead? Is it when your heart stops? When your brain stops? When your last cell dies? Medicine has had to wrestle with that question for decades. Today, doctors usually define death based on the irreversible loss of brain function, or the permanent loss of circulation. But biologically, there isn't one single moment. There's a cascade, thousands of tiny endings happening at different speeds. Some cells die in minutes, others survive for hours. A few specialized cells have even been kept alive in laboratories for days after a person's death. Death, it turns out, is less like flipping off a light switch, and more like watching an entire city slowly lose power district by district. Then something unexpected happens. Without your heart pumping, gravity quietly takes over. Your blood is no longer circulating. Instead, it simply begins settling, the same way muddy water settles at the bottom of a glass when nobody stirs it anymore. Within half an hour, the lowest parts of your body begin turning dark purple. Not because you're bruised, because because your own blood is pooling under gravity. Forensic investigators actually use these patterns to estimate how long someone has been dead. And if the body was moved afterward, gravity leaves behind clues that are surprisingly difficult to erase. Meanwhile, your body has another problem: temperature. For 37 years, or 70, or 90, your body fought constantly to stay at roughly 37 degrees Celsius. Sweating, shivering, redirecting blood flow, burning calories. Now, nobody's in charge anymore. The thermostat has been abandoned, and the long journey back to room temperature has just begun. The first thing you notice, well, everyone else notices, is that you're getting cold. Not instantly. If you've ever touched someone who died only moments ago, you'll know they're often still warm. For a while, your body carries the leftover heat from a lifetime of metabolism, but there's no engine anymore. No heart pumping warm blood, no muscles generating heat, no brain telling you to shiver. Your body simply begins exchanging heat with the room around it. Forensic scientists call this algor mortis. It's one of the oldest clues investigators use to estimate the time of death. In perfect conditions, the body cools gradually over many hours. But real life is rarely perfect. A freezing winter night, a hot summer afternoon, heavy clothing, a swimming pool. Even a thick blanket can completely change how quickly someone cools. That's why detectives never rely on temperature alone. It's just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Then your skin starts changing color. Earlier, gravity was pulling your blood downward. Now it's becoming obvious. The parts of your body closest to the ground slowly turn deep red, purple, or bluish. The areas pressed against the floor stay pale because there's too much pressure for blood to settle there. This pattern is called livor mortis. It's surprisingly useful. If someone dies lying on their back, but investigators later find blood pooling along the front of the body, something doesn't add up. At some point, the body was moved. Gravity has no reason to lie. Now comes the part almost everyone has heard about: your muscles. For the first couple of hours, they actually relax. Your jaw may fall open, your arms become loose, your fingers uncurl. It's called primary flaccidity. Then, everything changes. Inside every muscle fiber are microscopic machines that spend your entire life pulling and releasing over and over again. Every smile, every blink, every heartbeat, every step you've ever taken. They all depend on one tiny molecule we mentioned earlier, ATP. Without ATP, those microscopic machines can't let go. Imagine zipping up a jacket, then snapping the zipper off before you can unzip it. That's essentially what happens inside your muscles. The fibers lock in place, your jaw stiffens, your neck stiffens, your fingers curl, your legs become difficult to bend. This is rigor mortis, the famous stiffness of death. Contrary to what crime shows suggest, it doesn't happen instantly. It usually begins a few hours after death, reaches its strongest point around half a day later, and eventually disappears as the muscles themselves begin breaking down. In other words, the body gets stiff, then soft again. Death has stages. Even stiffness has stages. But here's something movies almost never show. Dead bodies can still move. Not because they're alive, not because they're haunted, because physics doesn't care whether you're breathing. As muscles stiffen, they can pull joints into slightly different positions. As gases build inside the body later, arms may shift, fingers can twitch. A leg might slowly change position. In rare cases, the torso can even rise slightly before settling back down. Imagine being the night security guard who wasn't told any of this. Yeah, that's been a rough shift for more than one person. Then there are the sounds. You've probably heard stories about dead bodies groaning. As unsettling as that sounds, it can happen. Air trapped inside the lungs and airways may escape as the body is moved or as internal pressure changes. That air passes across the vocal cords, producing sounds that can range from a quiet sigh to something surprisingly close to a groan. No, the person isn't coming back. It's simply air taking the last available exit. The same thing can happen from the stomach or the intestines as bacteria continue producing gas. The human body becomes surprisingly noisy, even after the person is gone. Speaking of myths, let's kill one right now. People love saying your hair and fingernails keep growing after death. They don't. Not even a little. Hair growth requires living cells constantly dividing inside hair follicles. Nails need living tissue beneath them to grow. After death, that process stops. So why does everyone think otherwise? Because your skin begins drying out. As moisture leaves the body, the skin shrinks slightly around the fingers and scalp. The nails become more exposed. Hair appears longer. It's an illusion. Your barber isn't losing customers to cemeteries. capillaries. Meanwhile, something much stranger is happening inside every single cell of your body. Remember those tiny power plants that ran out of oxygen? Now they're failing completely. Without energy, cells lose the ability to control what goes in and what stays out. Water rushes where it shouldn't. The walls begin weakening. Enzymes that normally stay safely locked inside tiny compartments suddenly leak out. And then your cells begin digesting themselves, literally. This process is called autolysis, which means self-digestion. For your entire life, those enzymes helped break down food, recycle damaged parts, and keep your cells healthy. Now, with nobody left to control them, they start dissolving the cells from the inside. It's strangely poetic. Your body begins taking itself apart, using its own tools. No outside bacteria required. Not yet, because the real cleanup crew has only just arrived. And then, your greatest ally becomes your greatest enemy. For your entire life, trillions of bacteria have lived inside you. There are more bacterial cells in your body than there are people on Earth. Most of them never tried to hurt you. Quite the opposite. They helped digest your food, produced vitamins, kept dangerous microbes under control. You literally couldn't have survived without them. But they all had one thing keeping them in check. You, your immune system. Every second of every day, it patrolled your body like an army guarding a city. The moment you died, that army disappeared. The bacteria didn't suddenly become evil. They simply stopped being policed. Imagine opening every prison door in a country at the exact same time. Not because anyone escaped, because the guards simply vanished. The largest bacterial population in your body lives inside your intestines. While you were alive, thick intestinal walls kept them exactly where they belonged. But those walls are made of living tissue, and living tissue doesn't stay alive forever. As autolysis weakens those cells, bacteria begin slipping through. They spread into places they were never meant to reach. The liver, the bloodstream, the muscles, one microscopic colony at a time. This stage is called putrefaction, and despite the intimidating name, it's simply nature recycling what it borrowed. Those bacteria continue doing what they've always done, breaking down organic material, only now the organic material happens to be you. As they feed, they produce gases. Lots of them. Carbon dioxide, hydrogen, methane, ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, the same gas that gives rotten eggs their unmistakable smell. Those gases have nowhere to go, so they begin collecting inside the body. Slowly, pressure builds, your abdomen starts expanding, then your chest, sometimes even your face. This is why people often imagine bodies swelling. They're not filling with air from outside, they're producing gas from within, and that pressure can do surprising things. Your tongue may push forward. Your eyes can appear more prominent. Fluid may be forced from the nose or mouth. It looks dramatic, but it's simply pressure looking for the easiest escape. Meanwhile, the color of your skin changes again. Earlier, gravity painted parts of your body purple. Now, chemistry joins in. As red blood cells break apart, iron-containing pigments react with sulfur compounds produced by bacteria. The result? Greenish patches. They often begin low on the abdomen. Not because that's where decomposition starts, but because that's where many of your gut bacteria have been living all along. From there, the color gradually spreads. Under the skin, another strange pattern sometimes appears. Dark branching lines that resemble tiny tree roots or lightning bolts. They follow your blood vessels. For years, people thought these markings looked almost beautiful. Their name certainly does. Marbling. It's one of the unmistakable signs that decomposition is progressing. Now let's introduce some of nature's fastest detectives. Flies. They've evolved over millions of years to detect something humans can't. The scent of decomposition. Depending on where the body is, some species can arrive within minutes. Not hours, minutes. A single fly lands, investigates. And if conditions are right, she lays eggs, tiny, almost invisible, usually in moist, protected areas. The eyes, the nose, the mouth. Small wounds, anywhere soft tissue is easiest to reach. It sounds unpleasant, but from the fly's perspective, it's the perfect nursery. Warm, protected, and full of food. Within a day or so, those eggs hatch into larvae, better known as maggots. If that word makes you uncomfortable, you're not alone. But forensic scientists absolutely love them. Not because they're pleasant, because they're astonishingly predictable. Every species develops on its own schedule. egg, first stage larva, second stage, third stage, pupa, adult fly. Temperature changes the speed, but the sequence remains remarkably consistent, which means investigators can often estimate how long a body has been exposed simply by identifying the insects present and determining their stage of development. Sometimes, the bugs become better witnesses than the people, and insects aren't the only visitors. Depending on where death occurs, beetles, ants, mites, even certain wasps may arrive. Each species shows up at its own point in the process, almost like shifts changing at a factory. One group finishes, another takes over. Nature wastes remarkably little. Of course, none of this happens the same way everywhere. Leave a body in the blazing desert, and the dry air may remove moisture faster than bacteria can break it down. Instead of rapidly decomposing, the body can naturally mummify. Skin dries, tissue hardens, decay slows dramatically. Place the same body in freezing temperatures, and decomposition almost pauses. Bacteria hate the cold. Enzymes slow down. Time itself seems to crawl. That's why mountaineers sometimes discover climbers who died decades earlier, still astonishingly well preserved. Now drop that body into the ocean. Everything changes again. Cold water, currents, fish, crabs, different bacteria, different insects, an entirely different ecosystem takes over. Death doesn't follow one universal timeline. It follows the environment. That's one reason forensic science is so complicated. Every crime scene writes its own rulebook. But through all these changes, one thing never stops. Nature is recycling. Nothing is wasted. The carbon in your muscles, the calcium in your bones, the nitrogen in your cells, every atom that once helped you laugh, run, think, or fall in love is quietly beginning a journey into something else. A tree, a flower, a bird, another person. The molecules themselves have no idea whose body they once belonged to. They're simply moving on. And despite everything we've talked about, we're still only a few days into the story, because the longest chapter is only just beginning. By now, days have passed. Maybe weeks. The person everyone knew is becoming harder to recognize. Soft tissues continue breaking down. The bacteria have done most of the heavy lifting. Insects, if they had access, have played their part. Nature has been working around the clock. No weekends, no holidays, no overtime pay, just billions of tiny organisms doing exactly what they've been doing for millions of years. Eventually, there's simply less and less left to recycle. The skin dries away, muscles disappear. Internal organs are reduced to little more than memories written into the soil. What remains is the part of you built to last, your skeleton. The average adult has 206 bones. They're incredibly strong while you're alive. Pound for pound, bone is stronger than concrete, but bone isn't indestructible. It's living tissue. Even after everything else is gone, bacteria, moisture, soil chemistry, plant roots, and weather continue working on it. Given enough time, even your bones return to the earth. How long does that take? Well, that depends. In warm, wet environments, decomposition happens much faster. In dry deserts, bodies can naturally mummify and remain recognizable for decades. In freezing conditions, the entire process can slow dramatically. Some naturally frozen bodies discovered thousands of years later still have hair, skin, fingerprints, and even stomach contents. Meanwhile, in peat bogs across northern Europe, scientists have found people who died over 2,000 years ago. Their skin is astonishingly well preserved. Some still have facial expressions, fingerprints, even hairstyles. The acidic, oxygen-poor water almost stopped decomposition entirely. Nature has created its own time capsules. Then there are coffins. Contrary to popular belief, a coffin doesn't stop decomposition, it mostly changes the environment. Less oxygen, fewer insects, different bacteria. The process often becomes slower, but it doesn't stop. Eventually, nature still wins. Now let's talk about cremation, because that's a completely different journey. Instead of years, everything happens in hours. Modern cremation chambers reach temperatures of around 760 to 980 degrees Celsius, hot enough to completely destroy soft tissues. Despite what movies show, bodies don't burst into flames the moment they're placed inside. The heat gradually removes water, then burns away organic material. What's left isn't actually ashes. At least, not the kind you probably imagine. Most of what's left after cremation is bone. Those remaining bone fragments are cooled, then placed into a machine that gently crushes them into the fine powder families receive. So the ashes in an urn are mostly processed bone, not smoke, not charcoal, just the last mineral framework of the body you once lived in. Here's another misconception. People often ask whether bodies decompose forever. The answer is no. Eventually, there isn't enough organic material left for bacteria to feed on. The process naturally comes to an end. Every stage of decomposition has one purpose: returning borrowed material back to the environment. Nothing more, nothing less. Which brings us to perhaps the strangest fact of all. The atoms making up your body today are ancient. The oxygen you're breathing right now was forged inside exploding stars billions of years before Earth even existed. The calcium in your bones once existed inside older rocks. The iron flowing through your blood was created in a star that died long before the sun was born. You've never truly owned any of it. You've only borrowed it for a lifetime. Eventually, every atom goes back into circulation. Some become part of the soil, some enter rivers, some feed plants, some become part of animals, some may eventually become part of another human being. Nature has been recycling the same matter for over 4 billion years. Nothing is created, very little is wasted. Everything moves on, which means, in a very literal sense, every breath you take today contains atoms that were once inside dinosaurs, ancient forests, Roman emperors, Egyptian pharaohs, or people whose names have been forgotten for thousands of years. Death doesn't remove matter from the universe, it simply changes its address. So, what actually happened to your body? Your heart stopped within seconds. Your brain lost consciousness shortly afterward. Your cells slowly ran out of energy. Gravity rearranged your blood, your muscles stiffened, then relaxed. Your own enzymes began breaking down your cells. The bacteria that helped keep you alive became nature's recycling crew. Insects, microbes, weather, and time completed the job. And eventually, everything you borrowed from the earth was quietly returned. It's an extraordinary process, not because it's mysterious, but because it's universal. Every king, every billionaire, every scientist, every athlete, every person who has ever lived has followed, or someday will follow, exactly the same biological timeline. Death is the one experience every human shares. And yet, it's probably the one we understand the least. The good news? Modern science has revealed far more about what happens after death than people knew even a few decades ago. And every year, researchers continue discovering new pieces of the puzzle. If today's video made one of life's biggest mysteries just a little less mysterious, do yourself a favor. Hit subscribe, because the human body has been keeping incredible secrets for millions of years. And we've only just started uncovering them.